Phylum Placozoa, tablet animals. I'm going to talk about their structure and function, cell types, movement, communication between cells within an animal. So this is not animal to animal, but within cells, and then feeding, how they get their nutrients. Here is an electron micrograph showing one. They're small, only a few millimeters, eighth of an inch or so across, maybe a little bit bigger. There are these little brightly glowing spots. Those seem to be from crystals or spheres that are involved in gravity detection. And here's a simple sketch showing what they're like. They're hairy looking because they have cilia on the top and bottom. They have a ventral side and a dorsal side, show you the difference in a minute, and a fluid-filled cavity in the middle. So if we look at a little bit more accurate diagram, they have cilia above and actually more cilia underneath. They're spending most of their time gliding along in mucus. So they have these secretory cells of two types. One type is presumably releasing mucuses, and those mucuses adhere to whatever the placozoan is crawling across, and the cilia essentially swim the placozoan along through this mucus. But if the placozoan is free from things and it can stop secreting mucus and just go free in the water to move, or if it's torn free by wave action or whatever, it will wind up able to use both the dorsal and the ventral cilia to move through the water column until it settles again. Here's another type of secretory cell on the ventral surface, and this one may be secreting enzymes, whereas this bigger one is probably secreting the mucuses. Here's one of those crystal cells, and these seem to detect gravity because they're denser than water, and so when they go down, whichever way is down, they press against stretch channels, and the location they press against indicates down. These fiber cells seem to do two things. One, almost certainly, they have dense bundles of actin and seem to maybe be at least somewhat contractile with myosin, and so they're able to adjust the shape of the placozoan, and these long processes seem to communicate with other cells, and so they're probably also sending signals, probably as waves of ion movements, like in a paramecium or something else. Could be a wave of calcium coming in, and then neurotransmitter or chemical release where they contact other cells. So very simple, can't even really call it a nervous system. These aren't nerves, but they seem to have at least some of those functions. So they feed by gliding over things, and when they're detecting chemical signals of a potential food item, they release enzymes onto it and settle there until the enzymes digest it. And then all these little projections here, microvilli, these are helping create a high surface area to absorb nutrients from really abundant transporters. Once the nutrients are absorbed, there'll be amino acids, glucose inside these cells, and then those are allowed to pass out or move by transporters into this fluid-filled cavity, and they get to every other cell that way. I'll freeze for just a moment on this text. You can take a look at that. That has a little bit more information. Here's an electron micrograph, again showing the upper dorsal surface, ventral surface, these glandular cells of two types. Here they are, one secreting mucus, the other likely digestive enzymes. Here are these gravity detecting cells. If they're all removed, if a particular placozoan has none of them, it cannot tell which way is up or down. And then here are these fiber cells that are probably both communication and contraction. And few cilia on the top, more cilia on the bottom, and these absorptive cells also picking up material. They seem to have animal-like embryos, so this looks like a very typical animal embryo at a 4-cell and 16-cell stage. Here's what one looks like under light micrograph, moving across a plate. There's some folds where part of it is sticking up. And here's an example showing a single one in a time lapse in which one part of the animal is going one way, one is going the other. Nothing happens to tell them to coordinate in this particular case. The connection between them gets thinner and thinner until it snaps, and now we have two genetically identical, presumably placozoans, each going their own way. So, actin and myosin, presumption is the lipophil cell may have digestive enzymes. So I'm not completely clear on these, but lipophil here might be digestive enzymes. It might be this one that is producing the mucus. Just from the location, it makes sense to me that this one would be producing the mucus because they tend to be organized around the edge of the placozoan. And then again, these gravity sensing crystal cells with sodium stretch channels in the membrane around it, indicating which way is down. Trichoplax, placozoans, this is the genus Trichoplax. They have a significant, a large part of the animal molecular toolkit. So they have major signaling pathways, including the Wnt signaling, which is really important in development of animals, and the details don't really matter. This is transforming growth factor beta, another really important signaling pathway with cordon and noggin. These are major developmental genes and proteins. For neural processes, it actually has many of the things that a neuron needs, even though it does not have neurons. It has vesicles that will hold neurotransmitters. It has synaptotagmin, which is what fuses a vesicle to the surface of the membrane and releases it. It has voltage-gated sodium channels and calcium channels. It has glutamate receptors, can release glutamate. So these are all major parts of a nervous system, even though it doesn't have an organized nervous system. And it has most of the major cell adhesion proteins. Collagen, the major, and laminin, the two major extracellular adhesion proteins, but it's missing fibronectin. It does have fibrin. It's missing elastin, one that is a stretchy protein. So it's missing a few, these ones in red. In terms of cell-cell adhesion, it has integrins, it has cadherins, and some other major ones. So it has a lot of the molecular toolkit of animals, but it's missing some, and it's not clear whether they've just been lost or whether the ancestors of Trichoplax, of placozoans, never had them.